Welcome to Must Have Classics, where we restore history one classic at a time. Welcome back to Must Have Classics. I'm Nick, and today we're going to change it up a little bit. So Must Have Classics, that's more than just building cars. It's also much more than that in so many ways. And this series, I want to start where I start talking about what is a must-have classic and what makes a must-have classic, because it could be something different than what you're really expecting. So this video will be the introduction of the new series, Must-Have Classics, where we talk about cars and classic cars that mean something to their owners, to everyone, to history, or to whatever. It's a new series, a little bit different than doing the builds, but it's something I've been passionate about and want to do for a long time. So we're going to do it right by starting with the original must-have classic, in my opinion. And it's a car that, well, is on the logo and is in the intro, but it's time to finally talk about my car. So this here is my 1960 Ford Thunderbird. Now, when we go for a drive in a minute, I'll get more into detail about some of the history of it and all that, but we'll do a quick walk around here. So this car has been repainted years ago, and I'll get into more of that later because it's easier to sit down in the car and go for a drive in it and talk about it. So the car is not perfect by any means. It was never intended to be, knew it was never going to be, but it definitely is a must-have classic in my opinion. So again, 1960 Thunderbird, Wimbledon white, red and white interior. It has, let me open the hood here. Oh, here we go. So engine bay is not very clean. This is built a while back. This is a 352 original numbers matching motor that's been bored out and built to be a 390. It was built by my granddad years ago. Original Cruise-O-Matic behind it. Factory AC car. It doesn't work. One of these days I'll get it too. Pretty basic engine bay. In engine, 4-bell carburetor, Holley now, because the original Ford Motorcraft carburetors on it would not run this engine right, so we ended up putting a Motorcraft on it. If you see the air horns over there, I've actually got it running La Bamba for fun of it, and then I've got to click this to get the hood to shut back down. Of course, it does have the reverse hood, which is a great feature for these cars. It's one of my favorite things about this car, is having that hood that opens up that way. So get it nice and shut. Again, interior is not perfect. I'll get into that in a minute and why it looks like that. And then let me go ahead, grab the key out. Might as well get into the trunk that can sneak 15 people into a drive-in. So there I've got my original ads that have been with the car for years, all my trophies, and then stuff like that. Spare tire, trunk, carpet has all been redone. Make sure I have my key. Thunderbird logo. I have this piece. I've got to repair it. I just never have. The 1 year only 6 tail lights. And then what difference between 58, 59, and 60, or 58 and 59 have the 4 tail lights, and then they have like a V Thunderbird like this instead of the wide bird. And then in 58 you'll have flashes here. 59 you'll have Thunderbird and like almost like block with the trim, and then 60 you have the Thunderbird script with the slats on the rear to give that afterburner look. And then slight other small features. The mirrors are a little bit different, and then so are these. The 58 59s are circles, or these are ovals. So yeah, so this here is actually a decent example of a 60 Thunderbird. Again, it's not perfect yet. I'll get into that in a minute as well, but I love this car. I love the history of this car, and now I think it's time we get into it, drive it around, and talk a little bit more about it. Starts up like a breeze. So as I was saying, there are a few things that need to be done to this car, and one of the things is the glass. Both front windows are broken, the windshield's cracked as well. I actually have all the new glass. I got lucky with getting a rock chip on my front windshield and ended up cracking, so I was able to get insurance to pay for all of the new glass for it. So I have all the glass I need for it. Driving the car, it's like driving any old car. I don't have the power steering working. I've never dealt with rebuilding that. Just never really worried about it. I've got the muscles to just turn it, and that's what I've done. So, and it's got a few other flaws. The motor runs great. Like steering wheel, the horn ring is missing and stuff like that. But for what the purpose of the car is, it does great. I've always been someone that said that I'd rather have a car that I can get in and drive and, you know, be happy with than a car that is so nice I'm afraid to get into. Yet I'm building one of those in my Cougar, but that's a little bit different. I want that car to be super nice because I have this car to get and enjoy. So, going down the road here. Not fast, not getting up and going, at least. That Cruise-O-Matic, they're not built to get off the line, they're meant to cruise. That's exactly what this car does, and that's what it's great at, is cruising down the road. It will run fast, don't get me wrong. I've gotten it up to 90 to 100 before on some side, back roads, and it runs great. So a little bit of backstory on this car specifically. So in the 1980s, and actually before that, so this car was new in Crosbyton. It was bought new. It was the original owners were in Crosbyton, Texas, which is 7 miles from where my shop is in Rawls. My granddad was a mechanic in Crosbyton at that time, and so he was the mechanic that took care of this car. It was later originally owned by someone, and then they let their kids drive it, and that's who owned it after that. They had done a bunch of stuff to it, kept it driving and all that. He had always kept it maintained. A few things they had done to it. One is they had actually backed it into something at one point, or got hit and bent the wing on the right rear. And then eventually in like 79 or 80, the front end got so worn out, and parts were getting harder to find for these cars at that point, that my granddad told them they were better off to park the car and get something safer for the kids to drive in high school. So that's what they did, at that point, my granddad also had the bright idea that he wanted to buy the car, and he offered them to see how much they wanted for it. They told him they wanted $600 for the car, and he thought that was way too damn much. Would never spend the money on it. So it went to sat in the field until 1987, and he still went and paid $600 for the car after it sat in the field for 7, 8 years or whatever it was. He always told me that he always hated the fact that he waited that long to buy it because it was the same price and was way worse of a car after that. So from then, he had already restored 3 Mustangs for each of his 3 daughters. So we have a 67 Mustang that belongs to my oldest aunt, a 70 Mustang convertible that belongs to my mom, and a 70 Mustang Mach 1 that belongs to my younger aunt. And at that point, my granny didn't have a car, didn't have a restored car. She had her 65 Fairlane that they had bought new, but didn't have a car like this. So he always said that he was going to build it for her. And they started on the car in 1987. And as I grew up, it always was sitting in the shop, never really getting messed with. Eventually they had a few different body men work on it and all that. And I actually think I have a picture that we'll add that I think you can see the car in the background of me and my granddad when I was like 5. You can see the car in a lift in the background of the shop. So it always was around. I always saw the car. So they eventually had different body men work on it over the years, and it sat in our body shop for most of my childhood. Of course, I'm 30. I'll be 31 in a couple months. So you're talking any time from late 90s to the early 2010s. The car was always sitting in the shop, or in the body shop. And so eventually it was never going to get built. The motor was sitting in our main shop. This interior, they actually bought 3 other Thunderbirds just for parts to build this one. They bought a black 60 for the interior, which is this interior. They bought a white 59 for the windshield that's now broken. And then they bought another red 60 K-code Thunderbird that just came with, I believe, the black one. So they always had these parts. So this Thunderbird was always laying around. Well, when I went to graduate high school, my granny told me, look, I'm never going to get built, and I want you to have it. So it was my graduation present. And I got it as a primered shell, and I pulled it out one day in 2013. I was 18, 19, somewhere in there, 19 I guess. I pulled it out and started building it. I was working on a 78 Blazer and got mad at it, and finally decided to start building it. I spent the next 3 months that summer building the car into what it essentially is now. That's why it's not perfect. It was a 19-year-old that built this car. It was the first car I had ever really built. And it was also the only car I got to restore with my granddad. So that backstory turns this into why this is a must-have classic, in my opinion. So a must-have classic is not a super rare show car. It's not, you know, a car that has a 100-point restoration. It's not a $100,000 car. This car is a $15,000 to $20,000 car all day long. My wife has a 92 Mustang that is worth double what this one is. And it's a must-have classic too. There'll be a video on it too. But a must-have classic, in my opinion, is a car that means something to you. And this car means everything to me. I enjoy getting it out and driving it, and I can't wait, you know, for it to be passed on to my daughter, and she can get out and enjoy it too when I'm long down the road. And she's 3 now, and she loves to get in the back of it, and we have to drive around the neighborhood because I can't put a car seat in the back of this thing. But that's what makes this a must-have classic, is the story behind it. It means a lot because it's the only car I ever got to build with my granddad, and the memories of that can't be bought. I've never had anyone offer me any money for this car, because every time anyone's ever asked what I do to it, I always tell them, don't even think about asking, because I'm going to laugh at you. And that's exactly what I do. If anyone ever tries to buy the car, I just laugh at them, because there's no way, no money could ever buy this car from me. You know, it's not anything special to anyone else, but it is to me, and that's what matters. So, man, I almost kind of getting lost where I was going with this, thinking back to building this car and the years of doing that. But you know, the point of it is that, you know, it's talking about must-have classics. I've restored cars for people that don't really have much monetary value to it. I've built a '74 Thunderbird for a guy that, because he wanted to build one last car before he passed away, I built that car for him. And you know, all these things are, you know, it means something to someone and not to everyone else. But end of the day, you know, let me ask you, what makes a must-have classic to you? And do you have one? You know, that's why I always say is that I'd rather have a car you can get in and drive. Maybe that means more to people than a show car. So, but I think that really does it for this backstory on this car. I get to start heading back home with it. I don't even know. I just kind of been driving and haven't realized where I was this entire time. But the future on this car, there will be stuff done to it later down the road. A few things. One is the paint and body on it. I redid it when I was 20 because the body man that had done a lot of stuff to it before didn't have, he had like created his own body lines in the front. There was like 32 holes that were drilled in the nose of it when I had started on it, and I ended up filling all those and doing all this stuff to it. But at the end of the day, that was a 20-year-old me that did all that. The car is still not to the standards I have now, so eventually within the next year, probably, my '69 Cougar takes priority right now, because at the end of the day, I want another classic car to drive within, you know, before I start on the next one. So with that being said, this car eventually will get torn back down. It needs the interior redone in parts, because these are 40-year-old seat covers almost at this point, and they're starting to show some where the foam just falls out of it every time you get in the car. And then another part of that is the body. It was painted Wimbledon white because that's what my grandparents had always said they wanted the car to be. They wanted it to be Wimbledon white, and that's what I painted it because we already had the paint for it at the time. And now I like having cars that people don't have, and there's probably 4 other Wimbledon white square birds in the area. So I want something that stands out. So this car was originally, I think it's like Desert Rose. It's a real light pink. That was the original color of this car. So my plans is to go back with the original pink, the white top. I will not go back to the original interior. The original interior was a brown and green, and to me that's just disgusting. So I will not go back to a brown and green interior. I'll go back to the red and white with the pink body, white top. I'll go through, clean up the engine bay. This one I'll actually send out, get all the bumpers re-chromed, all the trim redone. The right rear bumper is actually bent from that accident years ago. So I've got to pull another bumper off one of our other cars. So all that stuff will get done at some point in this car the next year. But I wanted to take time and show it off as it is now. Because at the end of the day, it is still a nice car. I'm not going to pretend it's not. It still gets lots of attention everywhere it goes. And, you know, deservingly so, I guess. It's not every day that you see one of these square birds driving around. I'll say that probably owning one of these square birds is not for everyone. It is a big car that doesn't really get up and go out of the way. They're easy to drive. They ride incredibly well. If the air conditioner was working in this car, I'd probably drive it all the time, but it's not. I have the windows up right now because I'm filming and it's hot. So you can probably start seeing the glistening off my face any moment here. So eventually you'll see stuff get done to this car. Like I said, my Cougar right now is priority. But you know, one of these days, I always get bored with something and I'll tear it down. It's not the first time, it won't be the last time. So, but that'll do it for this episode. Like I said, brand new series where I wanted to talk about these cars and the history of these cars, and you know, what they mean to you or me or whatever, and you know, what they may mean to someone else. Well, I was so close to finishing what I was saying and then my camera died. So as I was saying, that'll do it for this episode. Comment down below and let me know what your must-have classic is, and let me know if you want to see more videos like this. We've got plenty of cars to do this too, so I do plan on keep doing it at some point. I've even got some Cushmans we'll talk about and all that. But subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. See more videos like this, and check out all of our builds. We've got my 1969 Mercury Cougar, the 71 Buick Skylark, the 49 Chevy, the 67 Fairlane, and a few more videos and cars that'll be coming out in the next couple of weeks. But that'll do it for this episode. And remember to check us out on Facebook at Must Have Classics Rawls, R-E-L-L-S, and Instagram Must Have Classics. And remember to do the most important thing, and that's get these classics out and enjoy them as much as you can. We'll see you back in the next one.